Hello everybody, this is a stone. It's a round one. And I procured this. Do you mind if I speak in a slightly English accent? Just slight, ever so. It'd be so kind of you to allow. Humor me. So this stone here, I found this in Vermont at the age of 5. My grandfather and grandmother lived on a family farm. It wasn't one of those farms where they raised food and other people purchased it, and that's how they made their living. It wasn't that kind of farm. They raised food for the family to eat. And my grandfather, he hunted venison to add to the table, to eat meat. And he raised beagles. And beagles are known as hunting dogs. And in 1935, he became paralyzed from the waist down due to a tree cutting accident in the woods, cutting trees. One lands on you, breaks your back. Next thing you know, you can't feel your legs. You got to learn how to walk again. You're called a paraplegic. You're considered handicapped. Nowadays, you get a special little snazzy-do sign to allow you to park in those up-front parking spaces. I don't know how I feel about that. I think if somebody had, and I'm going to just stop playing with my hair for a second, just to ground. I did not, okay, just ground. Listen to me. I'm talking about being handicapped and acting like you are. And being also so-called handicapped. And not acting like you are. What do you think of that? Try not acting like a handicap if you're a handicap and see what happens, unless you get off on it. Stop. Don't get angry. There is true handicap, and they need to be close to the building. There are people who can't breathe. They have emphysema. They can't park very far away, or they can't get there. In fact, somebody with severe emphysema from years and years and years of smoking, or mesothelioma, or whatever hardship that they endured that damaged their lungs. We'll talk about this shirt later. That damaged their lungs. That didn't allow them. They can't get enough oxygen. Mesothelioma. It rhymes with that. Emilio. Filmiova? Ja? Oye, como va? I'm just kidding. I'm married. I do not need a husband or Amelia. But that's what it rhymes with. And we'll talk about this shirt later. All right. How many years did go by? Okay, how many years went by in my grandfather's life, before I met him consciously, oh gosh, I must have been 3 or 4. And we would go to the Vermont farmhouse. Told you it was a farmhouse. It had a red barn attached to it to the right. An old big tree out front. Oak. White oak. Big old leaves, you know. The house was white. Beside it was the barn. That's where he had his pups. I don't know where his venison station was for draining the blood. I don't know. It could have been in the barn, but you know, when you're a child and you see puppies, that's all you see. So I don't know what else was in the barn. They did have a root cellar, and it was back around the house. And we would go through we wouldn't walk around the house. You know, that's the funny thing. I never walked around that house because you couldn't walk around the house. There were fences. We could go around the side, and I could go through down the kitchen way into the outdoors to the root cellar, which was a true root cellar. It's a subterranean cavity dug into the earth below a Vermont farmhouse where there are roots down there, but you also store your roots. So it was actually, when everybody called it a root cellar, it was. They call it a root cellar, but I'm calling it a cellar. Yes, cellar. Isn't that how you spell cellar? Or am I spelling it wrong? Everybody else is spelling it right and calling it a cellar. Wait a second here. It's celery, but it's a root cellar. And then put in the root cellar. cellar. Do I have a dictionary in the house? Yes, I do. So, I will look it up for you. And I'll look up cellar. But in the meantime, let me tell you my story. Let's go on with it because it's a good one. So my grandfather was crippled. I'll tell you because I asked that question. I'll answer it. My mother was born in 1935. And when she was 3 months old, born August, so September, October, November, they're cutting wood for the fire. Okay? He breaks his back. I never really cried about that before. I mean, because they were already not that wealthy. They just had their 4th baby. My mother. And I just realized this is the beginning of my story. Okay, girls and Daddy Jacks, both. How it was I came from a New England town with promised education, abilities, and talents, and chutzpah. How did I end up in the adult entertainment industry? Well, I'll tell you what. I never had sex for money. I never posed for hustle, even though I was offered $5,000 to show my vagina, because I felt it was a sacred and holy place. I didn't wish for other men to have a permanent or semi-permanent visage of it. How did I come from a place like New Hampshire where my mother was such a good person, you know, she taught us to love everybody, you know? And she taught us that after her work in California, in the impoverished Orange County, she said that the Black people had a really strong spiritual community, but there was such trouble in the school systems. There was just so much violence. I mean, the Black community was double whammy with drugs and trouble with the family. So she said they have a really strong spiritual community. So I, from that, always believed that dark colored skin people could do two things better than me. One of them is dance. and the other one was to feel deeply connected to God. But that's not true. There's no judgment there. You can't judge it. Who feels closer to God, you or me? You know, who's going to, oh, let's find out. Ask God. Yeah, how do you define God? Well, my experience with God is love, peace, and joy, bliss, happiness, timelessness. Like your lifetime on this planet Earth here, it's like that. And you have fractal selves. So just like white light can be separated into a visual where you can see the entire rainbow, you yourself are refracted by being in this body. And then you transmit as this personality of the fullness of yourself, which is white light. So you're but one small piece of your rainbow. To me, that's why the rainbow flag is so funny, because it's like, or all-inclusive. Well, I'm not. I'm a particular band of whatever I am whole out there. And there's a whole lot going on, I tell you. Hey, this picture about sums it up. You know? So we've got ourselves meditating in bliss, connecting heart, head, and belly to the sun and to the earth, while at the same time circulating outward through the heart. You can do the octahedron shape, tetrahedron shape, and flower of life. You can do some oscillations with it, and all kinds of wonderful things with meditation. I mean, you can do these things. You can learn them. I'm looking at Root Cellar. I got distracted. I wanted to tell, oh, all right. I got distracted. I'm sure it's all going to come in together at the end. Let's take a little recess. It's officially adult beverage hour, folks. Go get your beverage of choice. I'll be right back. Or we're going to talk about her. So that's right. I was talking about how I was not going to operate on this physical plane by selling out my sacred sexuality. But I was in the adult entertainment industry. I was a phone sex specialist. Do I get off on it? Do I do that? No. Did I get up? No. But that's what I did. Or I was a visual art, because it's a peep show. And the music by the Tubes. Look on iTunes or elsewhere, YouTube. Type in the Tubes, Tubes. Then type in She's a Beauty. I would not watch the video. It's distracting. I would play the song without it. I wouldn't look at the video at all. I highly recommend listening only. And on top of that, the video is so damaging to the experience of the song. You'd be doing yourself great injustice to watch it. It sucked. I grew up during the MTV era, when MTV still had no commercials at all. They had more music than commercials, but they didn't have any commercials. Anyway, they were like visual DJs. But the artists that came up with artists that came up with videos. I came up with such ridiculous visuals that distracted from my own workings of my mind, my own imagination, and I couldn't stand it. So see for yourself. Listen to it once without the visuals, and then watch the visuals and tell me what you think. Why do I bring it up? Okay, because she's a beauty. She's 1 in a million. You get to talk to a pretty girl, but it'll cost you $1 first. That's what a peep show was, babies. You put $1 in, and you find out their menu for $1. And if they wanted a BJ, that's what they would ask for. And I'd say, no, I'm a visualist. And I also do phone sex if you want me to talk to you. And there are prices for these. And I went through my menu. I'm not going to tell you what those were. Otherwise, you'll have people thinking I'm still doing it. And I'm not. That was how I got through college. I had no money. My mother and father didn't believe in giving their kids an education. My cousins all had plans in their college paid for. The plan my parents had was, you guys are on your own now. That's my white privilege for you. So I had a really good, solid upbringing, white privilege. And then I had the desire to actually become better at myself. Like, what can I do with it? Like, how can I, like, college is the way to go, right? Plus, we had on top of all of that, you know, the big person in my books, my mother, is that she decided we were leaving New England. And I'm a builder. I like the whole idea of, you know, creating a community and building from there, and people know each other and support each other, and there's always an abundance in a small community. There's honesty. And my father, they had grown up in St. Johnsbury. I mean, my great-great-grandmother, we have ancestors here before the Mayflower landed. That's how far back we go. Yeah. I know. That's why it's like, what? Through our verbal history, herstory, family story, our family story. Bizarre names, man. There was they had a fight with some Indians. There was a massacre somewhere. So my father went way. He's from the Canadian Vermont border. That's so far up north. And my parents met, and the rest is history. He was an athlete, star athlete, but he took some time out to go be in the Navy for 5 years, detecting the enemy offshore and telling the guys where to shoot the guns. So he was a secondhand killer. He showed us some really beautiful slides with the Buddha heads and the temples. I need to ask him about those and see if I can get them. Dad, temple pictures. He had a slide. He loved photography. Slide pics, temple pics, and Buddha. Just beautiful, beautiful pictures of this country that for some reason was getting bombed for whatever reason. We don't know. So I'm getting tired. I don't want to talk anymore. Back to this. So I found this when I was 5, and My grandfather was handicapped, meaning he couldn't feel his legs. Well, was he in a wheelchair? No. He walked with canes and crutches. And he learned how to balance his body. He would sort of just use his will and his core. This is the grandfather on my mother's side. To direct his legs, and then he would feel. Otherwise, he would have been wheelchair bound, which is what they do to people nowadays. Or they give him false legs. He actually learned how to kick his legs around so that he could hold himself up. I don't know how he did that. And they sold the farm for a song and a dance. They never offered it to the family because everybody was mum. And that was the problem. The great curse of a family that doesn't grow and become a legacy is that they keep secrets from each other, or they just act independently as if they don't affect others. And I'm thinking to myself, how is it that we're so programmed to think that you come to America? These guys were the new. My mother's side was the new. My father's got A positive blood. My mother is a daughter of the Mayflower. Like, she can prove that her DNA goes back to the Mayflower. Whereas my father's DNA goes back to the Indians. And they were already here. They didn't come over in some boat. And yet, I'm not claiming to be Indian. I'm just saying that his family has A positive blood, which means it's possible that he has ancestors that lived with the Indians and they actually procreated, and that they were here many generations before the Mayflower. And that's what the family story says. I have names. They have funny names. I'm not going to give them to you. And they been here for a long time. Where the idea of America being discovered, it was already established. It's so weird. Anyway, all right. My grandfather on my mother's side, however, they came over with the Mayflower. They were traumatized people. Traumatized. And I was taught through that line is that you must become independent from other people, or you don't give unless it's through charity. And charity doesn't begin at home. It's making yourself feel good by imagining somebody outside of yourself perceiving you as better off than them. And therefore, you have this wonderful husband in this house and these kids, and they have nothing. So therefore, you're going to give to them. Meanwhile, your kids aren't getting a whole lot, but you have a perception of that person receiving something from you that most assuredly your kids are being accounted for. I wasn't accounted for in the family with any sort of gift. Meaning, here, let us help you with your career choice. Until the year 2017. And what a difference it makes. That's my white privilege for you. Okay? Yeah. My parents saved money for years and years and years. They saved it for all different ways. Very devious, some of it. Not all of it legal. All of it 100% legal. Devious, but legal. Always legal. Always. To the T. I was like, why don't you guys hire a different accountant? Like the one my ex-husband used. And they're like, no. Everything by the book. Always by the book. So they pay out the nose. So I'm not divulging any information that would get them or me into tax trouble. The trouble with them is that they pay all the taxes that they asked for. And yeah, that's not trouble at all. I think it's a smart. My father wasn't radar, puts them under the radar, well under the radar. I mean, that's the funniest thing about TurboTax and shit. If you claim something, they will give you an alert that says, this puts you above the radar. Are you sure? I'm not saying get away with things. I'm not telling you to be devious. But I will tell you, it was under the radar that my grandfather, where I found this stone, it came as a big surprise to me when I found out he was handicapped. I didn't find out until I graduated in 1981. So let's just say 5, rounded up. No, let's say 3. 3 to 18, 15 years later. 15 years. I don't know my grandfather is handicapped because he doesn't identify as handicapped. We never use the word handicap. He's the one hunting. I mean, deer hunting is about sitting around for a really long time waiting for the deer to go by. And he was a marksman. He won awards. He had trophies. Yeah. 15 years. And I didn't know my grandfather was handicapped. And this is how I found out. Let's see if I have a picture. So, I was graduating from high school. And I don't have a picture. I was graduating from high school. And then, oh gosh, was it my sister graduating from high school? Yes! It was my sister Corky graduating from high school. And I was sitting in the benches and Gail McGovern was there. And we turned around and look. And my grandfather was sitting there. And he puts on his handsome dark brown eyes. And this is my mother's side, okay? Dark brown eyes, dark brown nose. My father had blue eyes, and I have blue eyes. My father has A positive blood. I have O positive like my mom. And yeah, I have blue eyes. So we have blue eyes on that side, and then black eyes on the other. And I'm the only child in my family that has blue eyes. Anyway, so I'm sitting there with Gail, who's a good old Irish gal in the States, McGovern, and we look over our shoulder, and my grandfather, he beams the biggest happy, he just like sends love, like sends it. That's what we do. I learned how to do this. It's when you connect to somebody, then you beam through your eyes, and you just do this like, hello, and you send your energy out. And that's what I learned how to do. I thought, oh, that's what you do when you smile at somebody. So that is friendly. Yeah, I do that. It got me into trouble with my boyfriend at bars because he thought I was trying to get into the guy's pants that was at the bar, or like, anyway, maybe if you're listening to this, I'm just realizing this now that my family, we're all beamers. We beam. Like we look at you. And okay, let me see if I can demonstrate. But first I'll finish up my point. Gail said to me, Kathy. Yeah, Kathy. She goes, Kathy, who's that handsome old man winking at us? He was also winking. I love that. Of all, okay, my grandfather, I loved him. Ha ha. What a great guy. Anyway, I'm like, oh, I know what, no. She didn't use that adjective. I knew it was an H word. See how I'm in denial? It was handicap. She's like, who was that handicapped man winking at us? Who's that handicapped man winking and smiling at us? Something like that. Hey, Kathy. She taps me on the shoulder. Because I would, my grandfather. And I was like, handicapped man? She meant my grandfather. That's when I found out my grandfather was handicapped.